Yeah, it's interesting. You got to show all the cool stuff, and I have to do the boring PowerPoint. That's how it is. Okay, so finally, I want to wrap up with what we have heard and put it in context of where we are heading. I talked about what we have done in my opening keynote, so this will be more where we are heading with all the updates. And of course, I waited till the last moment to give the slides out because I didn't know what other keynotes were saying, so I wanted to make sure everything is captured. So let's get on. I think by now you're bored. 5G and edge, critical. It's 4 times the size of the cloud market. So if you have missed cloud computing, fine. It's 4 times the opportunity. Don't miss this one. Because if you miss it, then might as well retire, okay? So I'm going to talk about 5 things that will take us in the next 1 to 2 years, okay? I'm not like Tom and others who will think 20 years, 5 years, right? It's just 1 to 2 years. That's all we can think. The first most important thing is the re-aggregation will follow disaggregation, okay? And this is where you saw the power of blueprints. But now we have a lot more projects that kind of are helping fill up the gaps. This is an updated diagram. I always put this up. I've been putting this up for the last 5 years. And every time a few projects drop off, a few projects get on, some of them, or I would say most of them, stay. The biggest changes in this slide are on the right-hand side, mostly in the core infrastructure, where a lot of Naas are now mainstream, right? Whether it's Sonic or Dent, you heard from both of them. A lot of new innovations have happened in the data plane beyond DPDK and FDIO. We've got eBPF as another way to get directly into the kernel for lifecycle management and things like that. For those of you who are not familiar with that, look it up. It's the extended Berkeley packet filter kind of concept, but that's one thing. And then what has happened is Kubernetes, we don't want to clutter Kubernetes with telecom concepts. We know what happens when we do that, from our learnings in OpenStack, right, and Neutron. So what has happened is projects like Nefio, which creates CRD on top of Kubernetes, are extremely beneficial, and kind of they plug back into the orchestration angle, like ONAP. And then you have the Camara project that is, global APIs that need to be exposed for network as a service. You got Silva, which is the EU-specific requirements on energy, security, edge federation, et cetera. And then you have all the application layer projects, lifecycle management or packet core, whatever. So in all, a lot of work has been done to plug in the holes. All of these eventually get added to the blueprints for these use cases, so we're really excited. On the edge, a good number of projects that have come in. I would probably highlight use cases because we're now talking about deployments. Several new use cases have been added to Acrano as blueprints. And these are, again, not super blueprints, but they are blueprints. And blueprints are declarative configuration, okay? Just remember this. What has happened is nobody has stepped up in the entire community to say, I am going to be the integrator of integrators in open source. It's just not possible. So the concept here is if open communities like Linux Foundation can pre-integrate and pre-interoperable or test for interoperability early on, you get 70-80% of the way there. And then you customize it per market, per region, per application, okay? And all of this work is done in conjunction with standards. There's a ton of standards body out there, okay? You heard from OCP, who's specifying hardware. There is others. Some of them are very active. Some of them are not that active. There's not that many open source networking foundations left, I would say. So we are kind of fortunate to have a community that is really large and growing. There's not that many edge and IoT open source foundations left. So we are happy to sort of support that. But if there are others, we'll work with them. So just keep that in mind. So that's the re-aggregation. And a perfect example of the re-aggregation was the previous two keynotes. Tom and Tejas showed how super blueprints were used for Ops 5G and DoD applications. Heather and Rob showed how they're used for manufacturing applications. So that leads me to number 2, which is, this is not Linux, right? Where it's just available and you can do it for anybody. It's not possible. You need vertical market adoption. And so the way we look at it is a whole bunch of projects at the bottom where you group them by the markets, whether it's enterprise, service providers, or end users, including government. You look at their use cases. These will keep changing. And then you prioritize based on which verticals are really going after open source. And if you look at the top, this is a linear order. I always say that, and it has not changed. Industrial manufacturing is the hottest edge compute IoT market for enterprise. And the easiest use case is predictive maintenance, okay? Saves millions and millions of dollars, okay? Then it's energy, then it's commerce, then it's retail. The local building automation, logistics, the local governments like the smart cities and all, as well as healthcare, they're not yet stepping up the game, primarily because of regulations and processes. But we're starting to see some of the agricultural work stepping up, so we'll start seeing some of those markets step up. But keep in mind, what we do has to be taken, integrated as much as possible, and then verticalized, okay? And some of that verticalization is starting through what is called digital transformation in these industries. And I'm not a digital transformation expert, but I found this slide very interesting because on the y-axis is just verticals that I showed, some of them are there, and on the x-axis is everything you need to do to enable digital transformation. Green is good, red is bad. So the top part of the markets align very closely with, like they are ready for digital transformation, and they are the markets that are driving edge compute also. So it's not a correlation, but I thought this was interesting, okay? Number 3, cannot repeat this even more. Security is a top priority. It's easier said than done. So what I'm going to talk about is how we're doing it, because it's not just like anybody will say that. So the way we're doing it is we started through surveys, right? We worked with the top research universities like Harvard Business Review, Harvard Business School, and some of the other OpenSSF. And we've surveyed. Where are you, right? You want to establish a baseline. 98% use open source, 95% are concerned about security, and only half use SBOMs. SBOMs are software built of material. Do you know where the packages are coming from, et cetera, right? Your supply chain. And then there was another survey done, and they found out that it's not just CVEs and vulnerabilities, right? We're good at it. Finding them, scanning them, prioritizing them, and fixing them. That's part of open source release cadence. It's already happening, okay, in pretty much all the projects. But what is more important is lifecycle management, packaging, integration, and focusing on the top projects. So how do we do it across the Linux Foundation? And this is applicable to all the projects we have here, which is you have to secure the most important components. You know, if some GUI is vulnerable, but it's isolated enough versus a data plane component that can take down the entire router, you know where you prioritize, right? But you secure the most critical components, you automate the tooling, you get the training done with the people who are actually coding and helping. I think we all know that. And then you get to trace the SBOMs, right? And then finally, do the research, enable the research on the attack vectors, right? Not as sophisticated as what Tejas was talking about in DARPA, but at least in an open community that can help you do that. So when you do all that, how do you know where you are? Okay, and that's the most important thing. What you can't measure is what you can't improve. So we have a dashboard that has been implemented in the LFX tool set for open source projects, all of them, okay? I'm just showing you the networking here. Edge projects, cloud native project, everything, they have this kind of a dashboard. And what dashboard is showing is by project, what are the vulnerabilities, how many are fixed. You want the funnel to be kind of generically, settling down. What are the secrets on code? What are the non-inclusive, blah, 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 right? Like there's just tons of information on the dashboard that is sourced from the project themselves. And the most important thing is the OpenSSF best practices. So as you know, the OpenSSF was launched in response to an invitation to the White House, I would say. And it was kind of not a friendly invitation because of the Apache bug that happened. It got everybody to wake up and kind of do things. So Jim Zemlin, our executive director, was at the White House. He presented this exact dashboard on what has been happening. Very impressive. So this has become now a very important tool to show what the checklist is. If you do nothing else, just go through the checklist. It's probably 50, 100, 150 items. I don't know what the latest count is. But have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? A lot of it is process. A lot of it is governance beyond just code and code practices. So very, very important. Security is on top of mind. It is happening. And I'm pleased to report that LF networking and the projects are leading the way. They're paving the way of what to do, right? Ahead on SBOMs, ONAP, for example, is kind of right in the middle of doing that implementation. Okay. The fourth, we saw, and I think the analysts very eloquently put it, if you look at it, there's the cloud networking market, there's enterprise networking, and there's the telecom. The cloud and the public clouds and the telecoms have figured out a win-win. They're happy. Right? They have their space, they're working together, pretty much everybody. What about the enterprises? What about the Fortune 500s, maybe Fortune 100s? What are they doing? So I already talked about one vector, which is the verticalization of that, right? But there is a concept emerging that we are supporting very actively called network as a service. Why can't the network that we work on be consumed at the same speed and scale like cloud resources, right? And so the network as a service concept has been really well adopted. And there's an architecture, obviously, right? Without a stack diagram, we're not networking geeks, right? But there's a diagram. But effectively, through a lot of good work, the projects are coming together and providing this concept of network as a service. This is a huge undertaking, but it really allows the enterprises to take advantage of this connectivity layer that has been super, super agile, super open source, right? 5G, private lines, all of that, all of the above, and take advantage of that, right? Versus just saying, hey, give me a pipe and I will manage, or I'm just going to put my workloads on a public cloud and be done with it, right? And that's not it. So this is very important. We just issued a white paper. It's on the Linux Foundation networking website, so please download it. It has all the details on what this is being. And then finally, new technologies, new use cases will be coming. I'm a big believer, don't get hung up on new technologies. Technologies come and go, right? There will always be a better way to do the same thing. And there will be a disruptive way to do the same thing. But the two that we are paying particular attention to, obviously, one is 6G. And it is where enterprises and cloud will 100% align, right, from what we have seen. 5G caused telecom and cloud to align. 6G will cause all three of them to align because now network is ubiquitous, right? It just happens to be there. Of course, with all the hard work, but it just happens to be there. This is quite a way out, by the way, right? It's at least 5 years away. But a lot of the automation, orchestration, analytics, control loops that you saw will be used for 6G migration as well. So that's one. And then the other one, metaverse, right? So I was going to put, know our place. And then I said, fine, let's just put our place, right? Because this community, I hate to break it to you, not too relevant to metaverse, okay? At least the way it has been marketed. But where it is relevant is at the bottom layer. And where edge is relevant is at the intersection layer. So I've just slimmed down the architecture diagram. You know, there's a virtual world, there's a physical world, there's the intersection. We are relevant in the bottom two, okay? And what we have to do to be relevant are those 8 or 9 things on the right-hand side. Intent-based, you know, sustainability, distributed, all the stuff that you all know, right? So we have to, so my key message on Metaverse is continue doing what we do best, which is high bandwidth, low innovation. Continue the edge compute deployments and the revolution, bringing, you know, compute power to the devices. And it's like, you know, challenge to the community is like, where are the 5G connected edge devices? I think Tom mentioned that. Like, let's go for that, right? Let's make that happen first before we start hitting and going into Metaverse. Okay, so with that, I'm going to leave you with my final thoughts. And there's a whole day and then 2 days ahead. But 2022 is the tipping point for 5G, edge and IoT deployments. And when I say tipping points, you know, last year we would not have been able to show you videos of drones and robots walking around using blueprints. It's not possible, but now it is possible, right? Open source is the basis of a lot of verticals, so just continue the good work. And then final request to everybody is we have successfully navigated the collaboration in spite of the geopolitical and the macroeconomic headwinds. So let's just keep doing that. I mean, we're here to, you know, win globally as a community. So thank you all for listening to the keynotes. I know, you know, mine was boring, but the others were really good. So thank you very much. And continue the sessions. Do I need to do any other announcements? Sorry, I missed my script. No? Breakout at 11:30. Sorry, I left my script there. Okay, breakouts at 11:30, and we are done right on time. Thank you.